Hello guys, it's Seamaster again. Following up from the last video we had about Overwatches and their approach to balance and how I felt about that and the good and bads in regards to their balanced approach. Today I want to focus on my overall viewpoints of how this game is going since the changes and since it's been out for about a month now, and the way Blizzard approaches everything and what it means and the positive and negatives of this game at the moment. Now, I did my last video about Widowmaker and how she was affected by the nerf, and I didn't play with her for a while. I took a long break, about 10 days, so I got back into it. I tried every other character. I learned the rest of the characters in the cast so I could be more versatile, and I spent my time learning everybody to be able to swap out in any match and just to get a more full experience on what to do and what to counter. I got to Widowmaker and I did use her, and my report is, like most people report, she feels a lot clunkier. She feels a lot slower. She's a lot more vulnerable. Spamming's a lot more effective against her. You can now just shoot in her direction. She's forced to give up the positioning a lot more. And this game is very fast-paced, so having to give up your positioning and having to shoot a lot slower makes your defense and offense weaker. Your damage output's lower, so now tracers can get away a lot easier. Turrets are more of a pain, and Bash is more of a pain since they can repair themselves. So a lot of things she tends to counter, which I'll get into later, like say Pharah, have now become a much bigger issue. And as you see, they've ascended a lot since these changes, which is what I was warning about. So in regards to that, yeah, she feels a lot worse. Now, I was able to train her. I was able to train my flick shotting and adjust my timing and adjust my sensitivity, get a larger mouse pad, do all of that, and I can play her effectively. But she requires a lot more work to just be decently effective with than she did before. So you're either terrible with her or you have to be really, really good to be decent with her. And she's only useful in a handful of situations. Now you can pick a lot of characters who require a lot less effort, a lot less skill, and get a lot more reward out of it, which is another problem I'm going to get into soon on. Okay, so in regards to Overwatch, how I feel about it, in terms of the good things with Overwatch, there's a lot of good things that Blizzard does, and I think a lot of things they do almost makes them the antithesis of Capcom, because Capcom focuses more on the competitive community, and they do well with in terms of making the game in a competitive aspect. Even when they do make it more accessible, they make the game deep and approachable. You have a lot to learn. They don't do so many whining nerfs. They balance in a reasonable amount of time and generally do a pretty solid job. Yes, some characters are still better than others. Whereas their casual aspect, they don't make the games appealing. The games have a lot of issues and stuff amongst launch. No single player mode. A lot of these things were lambasted in regards to Capcom. Now I feel Blizzard's strength is a little bit different. And in regards to them, their casual aspect is great. They make games that are enjoyable to look at, easy to get into, runs on a lot of machines. You can play. There's a large population of people, so there's always somebody else on. Those are a lot of incentives to get into Overwatch. So if you ask me, should I play Overwatch, I say, well, if you want something that's easy to get into, easy to play, fun to look at, neat little game, sure. Those things about Overwatch are some of the strong points of it. You can get into it. It doesn't take a lot of practice, and it's nice to look at, cool looking characters. It fills a certain niche in shooting games that other genres don't fill, and it also is the reason it has a lot of success. This won't make a difference for competitive level play, but it could to the extent that it would make more people play it, and maybe they'll get better later on and want to play. But for a casual aspect, it's good in a lot of ways. Now, a lot of the problems with the bad aspects of this game, in my opinion, is they cater too much to the casual side, and they want to make this a competitive game, and you really just can't do both to that extent. When you make a game, a lot of games, even say like Smash Brothers, for instance, they make them where they're accessible, but there's a lot of things you can practice and pick up in terms of skill and depth, so you can get into that high level of play. And there's still a lot that you can learn. There's a lot of tech that you can learn. You don't have to learn it. You can play with your buddies, and you can play with your friends and have a good old time. But if you want to take it to the highest level, you're going to have to practice. You're going to have to put in that work. You have to learn a lot of things. You have to learn the timing and the teching of certain things. You have to learn to get around a lot of gimmicks and tricks. Now, what Blizzard wants to do with this game, which is the antithesis of competitive play, is they want to make this game where you can pretty much just pick it up and play it and jump right into it. But they want to make it more about character use and team composition and things like ultimates than it is about mechanical skill and aiming. And the higher the level you get, it makes the gap too small, and this is intentional, as we discussed before, or as I discussed before. The changes with Widowmaker in regards to her aiming was made so there's a smaller gap between the good players and the bad players. That kind of balance or design philosophy hurts the game competitively because you take away a lot of the depth. What happens with games like this is usually they die competitively early on. They're fun to look at. It has a huge audience at first, but then when people see a lot of the problems with it, or a lot of things become repetitive or just not that dynamic, it becomes a lot less enjoyable. I mean, if you watch basketball and the hoop is 4 feet or 5 feet off the ground and it's huge, it's not as exciting to watch when anybody can jump in and play. If any person can play basketball right away and become a professional level player or become really good without a lot of time and effort, it may be fun for people who don't want to put in the effort to get really good. But the reason you want to see the top level play is because you see the players push it to their hardest. I mean, accessibility is fine. Make the game easy to understand. It shouldn't be convoluted. You want to make the game appealing to look at. I understand all that, but why can't people just play their own skill level? A lot of these problems that people complain about would be alleviated if the skill level people are playing at were around their own. And I discuss a lot of this as well with the matchmaking and a lot of the complaints. A lot of times people are having problems with the matchmaking and the force 50% where you're playing a really good team. You have a steamroll one way or steamroll the other way. And a lot of people have been complaining about, I'm going to get into rank later, about how the matchmaking works there. I think a lot of these things and tuning these areas would make more sense in regards to making the game more competitive than just nerfing any competitive aspect in terms of skill or mechanical skill or aiming. I don't want to be punished for having good aim. I don't want to be punished for being accurate. Those ways of balancing, I'm not a huge fan of in regards to that. And not only that, we discussed this before, but the balancing aspect, now you see with the balancing, as I warned, you're starting to see a lot more Tracer, you're starting to see a lot of Pharah, a lot of characters that are easy to use, but a lot more reward comes with them. Like, say, Pharah is now a much bigger use, more of a problem, because she has no giant flaw, no strong counterplay. All the counterplay you get off of Pharah is if she hovers in the air like an idiot, or she's not really a good player, and you can just shoot her when she's not paying attention. But if she stays on the ground and jumps at a smart time, or uses her high mobility to get around, she can, not only with the infinite ammo, and the fact that the game doesn't reward a lot of really good aim, but she can shoot indefinitely pretty much. Infinite rocket launcher, covers a lot of space. She can force you to move. You can't one-on-one her directly when she knows you're there against a good one, because they can force you to give up your positioning constantly. You can't trade hits with her. She can push you out of, she can make you get out of hiding, she can make teammates scatter, she can make you focus on her in the air so now you're vulnerable on the ground. A lot of the most dangerous things in the game, like Roadhog's hook, like Junkrat's tire, a lot of Junkrat spam in general, things like Reaper's shotgun, even Reinhardt's shield. She can get around all of that and still do lots of damage, have lots of reward, and not have to really aim. And that's the problem you get into with the design philosophy. But one of my biggest problems with the game is the fact that it just really rewards not aiming. And this is one of my biggest, this kind of gives me a love-hate relationship with the game, is that you shouldn't have to be a super Twitch sniper to be able to play a game. I understand that. But to make it so aiming is pretty much irrelevant unless you're maybe sniping with Widow, or maybe if you want to play Soldier 76 at a long range, or maybe even McCree. Especially Widow, because Widow you have to aim. If you can't aim with Widow, I mean, Widow at this point is pretty much unplayable unless you're really, really good. But in regards to that design, it just makes us with the infinite ammo and the quick reload time and the high damage, and there's no reason not to spam. And the penalty for dying is just pretty much nothing. It takes you some time to get back, but there's no reason not to spam. And since there's no reason not to spam, the game rewards, especially a rocket launcher or explosive characters like Junkrat and Pharah, it gets really bad. No need to aim, lots of shooting, lots of spamming. Or Hanzo, another one, shooting any which way and getting a lot of hits. It doesn't reward that careful aim. It doesn't reward managing resources intelligently. If I play another game and enemies run out of ammunition, they got to go pick up something. It makes you so they're now vulnerable. You can go in on them. It makes them they have to choose their shots and pick them appropriately. Now, if you're going to say, well, we need infinite ammo so that we can keep the pacing, but what about health packs? Why make it so you can go get health packs? Why not just have regenerating health? Why? So you can have a healer class, but I don't agree with that logic. But even if you're going to give them infinite ammo, the reload times on certain characters need to be brought up, because right now it's just way too spammy, way too much shooting with no regard to anything. And they do it to make the skill gap smaller, because with the easy shooting any which way, it makes it more likely that a worse player can beat a better player. And with the ultimates as well, that's another problem. A player who's much worse can go against a player who's much better and do very, very well. Because a lot of the gameplay at this point is the ultimates. They charge so quickly. They're so powerful. They're so game-changing. They allow a lot of snowballing with the power. I mean, a lot of them just wipe the entire team out. Reaper, Pharah, etc., Junkrat, or something that incapacitates the team so you can wipe them out. And with this, a common strategy now is just to stack the ults. You can outplay an opponent for minutes on a point or a payload, only for them to come in there and stack 2 ults and wipe your entire team out and take the game just like that. Now, that's another problem, because, in my opinion, for competitive play, you can't make a game competitive with so much of a random factor and a luck-based factor in there, where you can just not plan and you can just snowball off a lucky incident. it becomes too much about who can spam the ults. And I mean, I'm playing these games, you hear ult after ult after ult after ult. Like, some characters are getting ults 30 seconds. I mean, and another one especially is Mercies. That's a really big problem. People say, well, it's just to counter all the ults. Well, if you got that one badly designed mechanic to cover another badly designed mechanic, is that what you really want? People just spamming ults, people just getting the ult, who can spam it first, and then Mercy has to come in there and push one button, and then all your hard work is done. I mean, I have a lot of matches where I'm just picking people off one by one strategically, counterplaying, and then here comes Mercy out of nowhere, uses an ult, resurrects the whole team. Even if you kill her a split second after, the entire team is back and all your efforts for nothing. You can say, well, kill the Mercy. You kill the Mercy, she comes back 10 seconds later and can do another respawn. If you try to chase after her, she's behind a group of well-protected people. It's just too much. And a lot of these balance changes in regards to characters, quote-unquote, well, you know, Widow was too strong. Like I said, you should have balanced everything incrementally amongst the cast, because now what you're seeing is there are a lot of complaints about that. You can say, well, there's 2 snipers. Well, what about the healers? Lucio, Mercy, all the time. They're so powerful, and what they do is so good, there's no reason not to pick them. Same with Reinhardt. A lot of benefits. Strong hammer attack that a lot of times goes through walls. Tackle that kills things instantly. Large hitbox. The shielding, the ult is amazing, and there's no reason not to really pick him almost every time. Another problem with the aforementioned mechanics is that it makes the gameplay a lot more one-dimensional. Because of the high amount of spam and attacking, you're encouraged to always play aggressively. The defensive, more tactful type of play, the balance between offense and defense isn't really there. There's not as much conservative play or waiting and kind of like a counter play in that sense, where you play in a different way to counter your opponent. It's more about picking your character. You're pretty much encouraged to play aggressively all the time because of the way the kills work and the way the deaths work. Like, you don't have kills, you have elimination. So I can do 1 damage to an opponent. The other teammate can do the rest of the damage. I still get an elimination. So it encourages a lot. It pads the stats a lot, makes people feel like they're playing a lot better. It encourages people to farm kill streaks. It encourages people to play aggressively all the time. Don't worry about dying. Just keep spamming and spamming. Just as long as you get that ultimate and fire it off really quickly. It's like even defensive play, you're defending aggressively, you're attacking aggressively. Everything's about aggressive play. The game, rather you go 32 and die 13 times than to go 20 and die 0 times. When I first played, I played a more careful, meticulous kind of way where I would try to avoid dying at all costs, and I would go 18-0 and 20-0 a lot more often. Now, after playing the game a while, it encourages you to go 32 wins, even if you do die 8 or 9 times, or if you do die 10, 11 times. Now, normally, if I get that many kills, I don't die that much, but to me, it just seems funny, like a person who goes a huge kill streak, gets a lot of eliminations, but dies a whole lot, is getting rewarded for it. It seems like a good thing. It places too much of an emphasis on like KDA, the kill-death ratio, and that it matters to a lot more people who are playing on most levels of play, when it really shouldn't. It should really reward tactful play and reward a lot more intricate things than that, than what it's doing right now. But since the mechanics are the way they are, it rewards only one style of play, which is to go in all-out aggressive, which makes the game much more repetitive and one-dimensional to watch. Another problem with the game is the map choke points being designed the way they are. The entire map has certain areas that are extremely biased towards one side or the other, particularly in defensive places in certain sections like, say, Gibraltar, where it's a really difficult push for a long time, which is kind of designed to be, but some parts you can blow through really easily, and at some parts near the end, there are certain parts of maps you can hold off an entire section for minutes at a time much easier, where the offensive side has a much harder time. So it seems like they created ults to kind of counteract this, but it ends up being, well, bad in a way, because you can outplay the opponent's team for such a long time only for them to get those lucky ults and win. So it ends up being kind of like a war of attrition. You end up having to just stack ults to clear out the objective, because the offensive side is so impractical against defense in certain map setups. What ends up happening is in lower levels of play, defense is a lot stronger because players don't have good positioning, and at higher levels of play, offense is strong because you have the ult stacking mechanic that makes the defense basically worthless, which is something else that needs to be addressed. Another very large problem are the King of the Hill maps and how they make a lot of classes objectively useless because certain classes are just valued a lot more. The payload and hybrid maps are a lot better because every class has some role. Although defensive characters are weak, they can at least do something. In offensive King of the Hill maps, it becomes much more spam heavy, and a lot of classes have a distinct advantage over other classes which become basically worthless. Lucio, Tracer, Winston are all very popular picks, where a lot of defensive characters are basically worthless except for Junkrat, who's not even picked in high level metas. So these maps also should be expanded and more open-ended so that you can have more variety in playstyle instead of just some big giant spam fest you have now. A lot of problems you see with this game at most levels of play reminds me of Twisted Metal, for the PlayStation 3 because I grew up playing Twisted Metal, loved it. Always was a great competitive game and a lot of defensive and offensive balance where you could dodge a lot with the smaller, faster cars to make up for their weaker armor. And the last version of Twisted Metal, the games had super high homing, super fast firing rate. In other words, it was modernized and kind of dumbed down. So it became more about spamming and farming kill streaks, and kill streaks gave you ridiculous rewards. So you're encouraged to just go all in and just use a lot of weapons that would home in on your opponents and just fire without abandon. A lot of those problems I see there, I also see here, which also destroyed the competitive scene there after a few months after people realized what the gameplay had devolved into. And I think that could also be a potential problem here. And this is a problem you're going to get into because what Blizzard did is they just jumped in so fast and just started nerfing things so heavily that you're starting to see other things creep up. And this is what I warned about, and now you're going to start seeing it. And I don't think this is going to change. I'm not sure Blizzard is going to change this philosophy. From what I've seen and heard, they do it a lot. It just forces a love-hate relationship with the game. The way they handle these balances and the way they handle these changes is showing me that this is going to be more of a problem. They should have tweaked the game in a more incremental way amongst the cast. A little tweak here, a little nerf there, a little buff here, a little tweak there. You buff Zenyatta a little bit, maybe you nerf, increase Fan the Hammer, maybe you buff up something else, maybe you buff up Bastion or Torb in a way. But these huge sweeping changes, 30% damage reduction on turret, body shot nerf, scope nerf, ultimate nerf, Fan the Hammer down. Now you see people say, well, these characters are useless. And I would say, well, people are saying, why pick McCree? Well, you just pick Soldier 76. Because Soldier 76 has more range, good damage at all ranges, easy to use, self-sustained, quicker mobility. He's just a superior character. This is what happens. You have to do things incrementally. And now Widowmaker, you know, she's dropped in competitive play. You got to be pretty much godlike to use her. Even then, she's limited because everybody else can just jump around spamming, and you got to be super accurate. I can play a realistic tactical shooter, and I can zoom in and out and move around. In this game, I feel like I'm just stuck. I push through it anyway because that challenge to me, I like rewarding my skill. I don't want to just be forced to just play another character. I like to play different characters for variety's sake, but I don't just always play, you know, Roadhog or some other character. I don't always just want to pick one button and hook them in and then instant kill with another button. I want some effort and challenge in there. And the Blizzard's not really rewarding that kind of play anymore. They're punishing it deliberately. And that's a bad way to go about it. Now, in regards to the matchmaking, as I discussed with the matchmaking, the ranking, that's another thing. A lot of incongruent teams being paired up, people not using their mics. That's another issue. People playing against people who are outside their team to force an even score just makes the game too much of a stump in one way or another. It doesn't feel as smooth and consistent. It feels like one game you're stumping, another game you're losing. One game you're stumping, you get a bunch of bad team players, and then you're losing it. That needs to be fixed. The game should be more consistent all across the board. You can have these problems. The ranked mode, I heard a lot about the ranked mode. I haven't played it. I'm not a ranked fanatic. I might get on later. I'm the kind of person who want a fully pre-made team. I have a bunch of people on my list that make good team players. But I knew if I just jumped on with all the things I hear about it going on now, with how the points and stuff are rewarded, how you lose a lot and gain a little, how the coin flip mechanic works, I do it probably just frustrate me more. So I'm going to sit back on that. But that's another thing to look at in regards to this and how the game works in the matchmaking. Can Blizzard just tweak this at a reasonable rate, or they just go too far in the direction and just hammer it? Now, overall, with the changes, will Blizzard change any of this? Will Blizzard get better at doing these things in the long run in regards to the negatives? They do the positive well. They make games very casual, and that's their goal now, is make games casual. They are good at that. They're great at making games appealing. But when it comes to the bad nerfing system, they're rewarding too much of bad aim. A lot of those mechanics, will Blizzard change it? I don't know if they even want to change it. That's the scary part. I don't know if Blizzard wants to be a game where you have to really aim properly or rely on mechanical skill. It seems like they just want to be, you know, counterpick. Counterpick your characters, spam, charge the ult, stack the ults. Will they change the ults or make it so they're less effective or charge slower or a mixture of both? I don't know. Maybe. But in the current game, the game just feels too spammy, too luck-based, too random. It doesn't reward mechanical skill enough. It just feels like you're losing people who are really worse than you. You're really starting to see this with the Pharah meta, because Pharah is not only really, really powerful and really, really strong, she's very flexible and versatile. And Widowmaker still see a strong counter to her. She has to work much harder to kill her than Pharah has to kill her. People are saying she countered her really hard, but only time she countered if you floated out in the air, but you could quick scope and deal with her. If you flanked Widow, you were fine, but now she can just disrespect your entire game, see you, start spamming missiles every which way, and completely make you give up your position. She's strong up close, she's strong far away, concussion ability, knock people off of edges. So what you end up seeing is you have to work really hard to keep her from sniping at you when she's lobbing rockets all over the place. And plus her flight ability and splash damage and infinite ammunition makes her hard to stop. So much so that you're starting to see 2, 3, 4 Pharahs a game. So what really happened is the metagame shifted from one aspect to another. It's gone to Soldier 76 and Pharah being everywhere instead of a lot of McCrees or Widowmaker every match. You don't hardly see Widowmaker at all. So that's what happens when you make these kind of changes. Another problem with this on a competitive standpoint is that the risk-reward effort ratio is badly skewed. Characters like this have no weakness and take not a lot of skill to play, and they're becoming really powerful. Now, I play Pharah. I play a lot of characters, as you see. But the reward for not only being so versatile and have no weakness, plus the easy ability to spam, is just too much. And that to me is bothersome, that you put in the kind of work you have to do to aim really well, and somebody else can just pick another character and just go A, B, C, and then it's done. That's a bit of a problem. I don't know if that can survive a competitive game for a long time. Now, is it fun casually? Well, yeah, as I discussed before, people don't like to aim. People hate losing to snipers. People hate losing to turrets. People hate those things got nerfed. People want to spam. People want to run in and shoot. And of course, now people like this meta mostly because I don't see a lot of complaints about Pharah, because people like to pick up characters and like to just jump in and shoot wildly and randomly and get a huge reward for it. So it's no surprise that type of gameplay is now dominating in this meta. I still don't know if they're going to change Widow. There's a huge thread going on in the Blizzard forums or Battle.net forums about that, and they reopened it. It's thousands of replies. Will they even change and fix anything, make the scoping quicker, do something so it's not so clunky? I don't even know. Will they make McCree a little bit better without overdoing it? I don't know if Blizzard can do it. At this point, we're just going to have to wait and see, and I'll give another report back later. I hope you guys enjoyed this video about my feelings on the game right now, and as always, if you liked it, definitely like and subscribe.
Hello.